My man. Doing the most. Doing the most. You know I had to remix this bitch. Shout out our boy. If I get caught up in a storm, pray the rain just keep me calm. All my life I dealt with pain, see no evil cause on. Chop along just like an arm, new bitches we fucking on. Doing wrong without them knowing, I'm the GOAT if you ain't know it. And you can't go do what I've been through. Wish I had somebody I could vent to. And you can't go through what I've been through. Wish I had somebody I could vent to. I just need someone to call on. I've been making moves like Michael Corleone. I won't say that shit until it's set in stone. Bitch, don't say my name if you gon' say it wrong. I can't touch these drugs and keep.
Yo, it's your boy CT Crusher here checking in. Just wanting to remind y'all to go subscribe to my homie Hoodie Jube for the Hoodie Jube live podcast. We talking pressing topics here for you every night of the week. Hit that ding dong bell to make sure you don't miss an upload. Come join in on the conversation. Help us expand the community. We do a lot of giveaways, give away to a lot of charities, giving away to the local children's hospital. And oh, by the way, if you want a chance to win free NFL tickets, yes, I said that, free NFL tickets, make sure you subscribe and hit the ding so you don't miss a chance to win free NFL tickets. Peace out.
What's good, everybody? It's your boy Hoodie Jube, and if you're looking for the best restaurant in town, man, go try Weed Ass Chicken and Shrimp, man. They have the best chicken wings, the best chicken tenders, the best fried shrimp, the best fried catfish, and their fries are so amazing, covered with ranch, cheese, bacon, jalapenos. Oh my! Yes, you heard it. Go try it out. They got 4 locations: Monroe, Louisiana, Marrero, Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana, and Houston, Texas, baby. Go try it now.
Right, man. What up? I won't speak on nothing but the real. You know how I'm coming. You know what I'm saying? Say we've been down for too long. The only way is up, it's time to move on. Never leave your house without your shoes on. Them killers want to spot you, cannot move on. Ain't worried about that girl, I tell them move on. They say it's my fault, but I'm feeling I can't do wrong. Cut all my partners off, let me open like the roof gone. Long talks and I ain't never changed, it's just been too long. Gotta shake him back and that's a fact, so I'm turned up. Fall up in the club, I'm going down and I'm like, what's up? Throw me in that water, I won't go down, I'm too up. She want with a man, I knock that hoe down, I'm too up. Told all the friends, now she just want me to grow up.
You can't see us, I Saints going to the Super Bowl, talking black and gold. Cameron Jordan on the field, about to take a QB soul. Ever Kamara break a tackle, so you know he bold. Mike Thomas catching everything, so you know he cold. He talking Power Man, dude, he talking Marcus May. We in the backfield, we gon' make them pay. Them boys hitting hard, they need an X-ray. Yeah. We talking black and gold. 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 Straight to the Super Bowl. Your time is up. Our time is now. Say hoodie, you can't see us. Our time is now. Woo. Hoodie droop in the building. We shining now. We shining. You can't see us. Our time is now. You heard me? Your time is up. Our time is now. Woo. You can't see us. Our time is now. Say hoodie, hoodie droop in the building. We shining.
Here he is, Hoodie Jube.
What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Hoodie Jube, and we are back with another live podcast. And if you don't know, you will know. There's no YouTube without your boy Hoodie Jube, y'all. How is everybody doing tonight? Me? I'm doing just fine over here, ready to get this show on the road, man. And I'm going to give everybody a special shout out in a second, but guess what? We can't have the show unless we bring on our special guest. And y'all know who this is, and I know he's going to be smiling and smirking back there when I introduce him because he always smiles, and I always tell everybody, please, no homo on this one, okay? But he's got the best, shiniest bald head you ever going to see. He is, I'm literally going to say it like this, he is the best Saint reporter out there, and he's always going to say, no, Nick Underhill's better than me. Oh, no, Nick Underhill ain't better than you because he don't come on my show, and I've been asking Nick Underhill for a while now, and what is Ross Jackson been on here how many times? Like 5, 6 times. So you know who it is. He's the host of the Locked On Saints, my guy, Ross Jackson, man.
What's up, homie? What's going on, man? Thank you so much for having me on. I still maintain that Nick is the man. I know you're coming with the disrespect, and that's fine. But I still maintain it. No, man. But I'm grateful to be here with you, dude. I don't know how many times I've been here. It's been a couple though, for sure. But glad to be here with you, man.
Yeah, unlike Nick Underhill, he's like,
Stop
yeah,
it,
man.
dog.
He said, yeah, give me to the end of the season, and then I'll come on your show. At the end of the season, I still ain't have my man Nick Underhill on here. But we're gonna get the show on the road. But I wanted to give a special shout out to everybody. I know most of these people in this chat. It's probably always in your chat when you go on live. So we got Miss Dana, one of the queens. Who that to Miss Dana? We got It's Poppy 504. Who that to you? We got Miss Barbara Williams. Who that to you? Trav 504. Who that to you? You already know Jerry the OG in the building. Who that to you? Let's see. We got Miss Rose over here. Who that to you? We got JT in the building as well. Who that to you? We got Miss Megan in the building. Go Hawks to you. She's a Seahawks fan over there. Slim South 504, a.k.a. T.I. You can have whatever you like. Who that to you?
Yeah, you can have whatever you like.
You lie. Keeping it real. Who that podcast? That's my boy Doe 17, man. Who that to you? And okay, I don't know how to say this name, but I'm gonna say Oh Buddy. I guess that's how you say that name. Oh Buddy. I don't know. If I mess your name up, I'm sorry. I apologize. Uncle Deuce. Who that to you? And we got Tim Dunn in the building. Who that to you? So who that to everybody that is watching. Make sure you hit the damn like button on your way in, on your way out if you're leaving, which you shouldn't be leaving because the show just damn started. And hit the subscribe button if you are new. And also, we got our host, of the Locked On Saints podcast, Ross Jackson, with us today. Make sure y'all go subscribe to their channel as well, Locked On Saints, where they give you all the facts, all the news coming from a Saints reporter right here. Like I said, one of the best in the league. So let's get the show on the road. And basically, I'm going to be asking you a bunch of questions, basically what's your thoughts on everything so far in the offseason. So so far, I just had a show last week. I said, has Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis been cooking this offseason to you? Me, I said, yeah, they've been cooking something up.
Yeah, I think they're cooking. I mean, you look at, Mickey Loomis, and I can't mention Mickey Loomis without also mentioning Kai Harley, right? Who's been cooking on these contracts and getting Michael Thomas back on an incentive heavy deal that protects them, but gives him an opportunity to make his bag if he goes out there and performs. Getting, Jameis Winston to stick around on effectively a pay cut, getting Andrews Pete to stick around on effectively a pay cut. Seeing all that and the way that they've built out all these contracts, they've answered all their questions. The thing that I like that the Saints have done, well, not all their questions, they still have some work to do. If I was going to give them a letter grade, Hoodie, I'd probably give them a B, just because they're not done yet, right? There's still more to do. But the thing that I do like about what they've done so far this offseason is that they've identified where they came up short in 2022, and they brought in people who were demonstrably able to help you in those places. So, not a lot of interior pressure. Okay, let's go and get a couple of guys that are better interior pass rushers than the guys that they lost. They did that. They brought back Malcolm Roach too, which I think was a solid thing, solid move. They had issues at the quarterback position, solve that to begin the season, or at least put themselves in a position to solve that, right? We'll see what happens when it all gets out of the field. They couldn't finish drives. Okay, go get Jamal Williams, who had 17 of them things last year in rushing touchdowns. I don't know, 14 of them were within 4 yards of the goal-to-go situations, but the Saints couldn't get there because they couldn't extend drives. And so 3rd and 1, 2nd and 1, all those situations, he also helps you in those. And let's not pretend that just because Detroit used him that way, that's the only element of his game. He's a far more all-around back as a player as opposed to just usage. So I like what they've done so far. I would say that they are still in the process of cooking, but the meal is not ready to be eaten yet. They still have a lot left to do here.
Oh, definitely. And I know you was missing, and we saw basically the quarterback problem, bringing in Derek Carr. The other piece that I know you was probably shocked too, and everybody was shocked. Jameis Winston actually re-signed to be your backup, knowing that a lot of people say they kind of both similar to play style. Just one of them is a little bit different, because the reason why I say a little bit different, I don't know if you can agree with me or not, but if you notice the offense that Derek Carr ran for about 8 years with the Raiders, besides last year because McDaniels took over as their coach, but he was running basically like a West Coast offense. He'll come out to the line. He can call the plays, change the play if he needs to. Jameis wasn't that type of guy that would change the play, but he would just run the play and he'll just make it happen. And I feel like their play style is the same. the only thing you get in is you get an upgrade play caller that can call out the plays and not have the center having to call out the protects and don't have to call out, what they see. So I think that's going to be an upgrade for us. But to know that you got a Jameis Winston who can be just as talented as him as your backup now instead of a Jameis Winston to an Andy Dalton, not disrespect to Andy Dalton, but he just wasn't it last year. So to know we have those two back there, I think that does solve the quarterback situation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you went last year from Jameis Winston, who has a remarkably high ceiling, to a guy in Andy Dalton who, let's face it, has a low ceiling. And I think Derek Carr has a higher floor than Andy Dalton does. And maybe even though Derek Carr's ceiling might not be what Jameis Winston's is, and so you just kind of figure out like where all these people are. And I also think that like the conversation of like low ceiling, low floor, high floor is so subjective, right? Everybody has their own definition of what those things mean and what they look like and stuff. But you get a guy that can make protection calls at the line of scrimmage. That's a big deal because that was something that the Saints offense struggled with a ton at the beginning of last year and really throughout a large portion of last year. That's a little bit cooler under pressure, sort of what they wanted, that calming presence from Andy Dalton. They didn't necessarily get it, in my opinion. Now you have somebody that has demonstrated that they can be that. You get somebody that's fantastic in end-of-game situations, like in-game situations. So, Andy Dalton was never a guy that if you were down 6 points and you got the ball last, did you really feel like he was going to march you down the field and score a touchdown? I never felt like he had that mentality, right? But Derek Carr is the guy right now, fourth amongst active quarterbacks and fourth quarter comebacks, fifth amongst active quarterbacks and game-winning drives. And so I think all of those things kind of couple and complement in terms of what it is that the New Orleans Saints felt that they saw in Derek Carr as their option at quarterback. And I think that Jameis Winston sticking around was very surprising, but I think it's a good thing because you get somebody that's there for you, that has been in your system for 4 years, that has been successful in your system, and that is a fantastic locker room player, and now gets an opportunity to really like come back and get healthy, which he didn't really get an opportunity to do last year with the debilitating injuries that he suffered. So I think it's a good setup for both Jameis Winston and the New Orleans Saints.
Definitely. And the other thing that I like about, adding Derek Carr is that, like you said, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league, coming to win, comeback games for you. And people, I do have a few, Saints fans that was in the chat, especially I had a podcast with him saying, which is my boy, AKA The Scientist, saying that he thinks Derek Carr is just trash. He thinks that Brock Purdy, he thinks all these other quarterbacks that have been to the playoffs with a number one / number I say top 3 defense and great weapons around them and got put in a good situation. And because they won a playoff game, that makes them better because he said Derek Carr never won a playoff game. I said, well, he's been to one playoff, and the one year that he went 12-4 back then, he got hurt before he got to the playoffs and couldn't play. Right. And I said, ever since he ain't really had the best weapons besides last year, they finally gave him Devontae Allen. That was the biggest receiver he ever had. Everybody else was mediocre, no O-line. And the lady said it on the damn ESPN. He never had a top 20 defense. Yeah. All his defense been like 25 and below. Now you're getting a top 5, top 10 defense to go with Derek Carr. Derek Carr might not be the most winning comeback quarterback ever now because you don't have to come back, Derek. You got a defense that can help you while you're scoring, get you the ball back, score to where you can win games, where you don't have to come back and chase them.
Yeah, the Saints won 4 games last year by scoring a maximum of 20 points. I mean, like it's pretty good. And it's funny, like I think that the idea, my retort usually when people say, well, Derek Carr's never won a playoff game, is usually like a lot of times the people that are making that argument are the same people who make the argument that Tom Brady doesn't deserve all the credit for those Super Bowl wins because it's a team game. So it's a team game. Yeah, Derek Carr doesn't have any Super Bowl wins. I mean, doesn't have any playoff wins. But that's not Derek Carr's fault. That's the team that he was a part of. That's a team game, right? And so I hear you on all that. And I do think that there is something about a guy that's been there and won before. But, out of the Saints' options, Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, Taysom Hill, and Derek Carr, like how many of them have won playoff games? Right. So like, where's your better option? How many of them have won Super Bowls? Where's your better option? Right. You didn't have one. And so I think Derek Carr was easily the best option that you had available as a player that you can project into winning some of those games.
Definitely. And my favorite part, I forgot the lady's name. Okay. The one that, no, I
was that her? Okay.
I think it's one of the ladies that work inside the Saints facility, and like whenever they sign new players, she interviews them and asks them questions and stuff.
Oh, Aaron Summers.
Aaron Summers. She asked Derek Carr, and I watched one of the videos. It was like a 4-minute video after he signed his contract, and he was asking, what do you bring to the table? He said, I'm gonna bring it all or whatever. But he said, what I really like about the Saints is that I actually being able to have the opportunity again to call my plays up front. You know, basically
Mhm.
the West Coast saying, hey, they're going to have 4 plays. I can call it. I can call it my protection. McDaniels didn't let him do that last
Right.
year. And I think that's why he looked a little bit different last year than what you normally see. A 4,000-yard Derek Carr balling out. When you change the guy's offense after him running that for 8 years, it kind of messed him up. And then they benched him. And I'm glad y'all benched him because now we got him on our team as our starting QB, so.
Yeah, I think between the Lions stint and then the Raiders stint, like I don't think that there's anything that you can point at opposite, of Josh McDaniels that says that he's a good head coach, right? Or that he's a good play caller when Bill Belichick's not the check and balance. And so I look at the 14 interception seasons over the course of the past 2 years. That was a roster that was in flux. That was a coach in John Gruden that got fired halfway through the season. Rich Bisaccia stepping in to being his interim head coach. So a lot of turmoil there. And then you get a new offense, new offensive weapon in Devontae Adams, but Darren Waller's injured throughout the season. And you have a head coach that's never been able to make it work in Josh McDaniels. It's not surprising to me that those 2 seasons were the toughest seasons of Derek Carr's career. But to assume that he just completely forgot to play football because of those 2 years, I think is a little overzealous, right? Like he's still a very, very good quarterback that you have to put weapons around, and we've watched the New Orleans Saints find ways to do that. And I think they can still do more of that this offseason, but they've done a good job already starting to kind of build all that, bringing Juwan Johnson back, bringing Michael Thomas back. You've got Chris Olave, you've got Rashid Shaheed, you brought in Jamal Williams. Hopefully you have Alvin Kamara for some portion of the season, but I think you still have to look at more at running back, maybe another contested catch receiver, all those things. But the Saints are in position to do all that.
Definitely. And speaking of, bringing Michael Thomas back, a lot of people are saying they were shocked. They thought he was gone. Well, we all thought that at 1st. Now, once I seen the Derek Carr sign,
Yep.
I knew he was going to stay because he said, thank you, Jesus. He was recruiting him to come in. You think we're going to let him recruit and he's going to say all that just to leave? No. So I already knew right there he was going to resign. But knowing that you have a guy like him to coming back, knowing that he does face injuries, hopefully, he stays healthy all season, but you'll have him, Olave, and Rashid Shaheed so far. The question is, we're going to add more receivers. But, is there any veterans out there that you like that you say, hey, I would like to bring in? Because I think it was CBS Sports that posted it on Twitter, said the best fit right now was DJ Chark. They said the best fit for DJ Chark was the Saints. Would he be an option for the Saints, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that he would be. I mean, they brought back 2 LSU Tigers last year. I'm sure they could do it with 1. They tried to do it with Foster Moreau, and of course, we, unfortunately, found out through that process that he's dealing with a potentially life-threatening condition, and so he's not going to be playing football for a little bit. But I think the Saints could absolutely go after a guy like DJ Chark. They could go to the draft too. I mean, this is a really good draft for big wide receivers. Whether that's in the first round, if a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba falls into the range that they can trade up and grab him, or potentially tumbles, depending upon there's so many, there's cornerback runs, quarterback runs, edge rusher runs, DT runs, tackle runs that are all expected in this year's draft. If a lot of those happen in the first round, wide receiver is going to fall. And we've seen that several times before. Remember DK Metcalf falling into the second round, things like that. And so, if that happens, then great. If not, then you have guys like A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest, or Bryce Ford Wheaton out of West Virginia, or Davis Allen, the tight end out of Clemson, who's got like a 91.7 contested catch percentage over the course of his career in Clemson. Matt Landers, the super speedy but big-bodied wide receiver out of Arkansas. There's a lot of these guys that the Saints could still find to help continue to build around that wide receiver room. And I think that is important because, yeah, you got Michael Thomas back for 2023, but you can't go in and say, all right, nothing's going to happen. He's going to be fine. He's going to play all 17 games. You hope that that's the case, and certainly we'd love to see that be the case, but you can't bank on that. And so you have to continue to build into that room. So I don't think the Saints are done there by any stretch of the imagination.
Definitely. And I guess to move on to the next position, you were speaking of, we hoping that AK doesn't get suspended too long. I know there's been some recent news by their attorney, saying that they can see, AK and them feel really good about the court coming up because the guy, remember they had that situation where we was like, he was trying to stop him from getting on the elevator with him. Well, that's where the part where he pushed him and told him to stop, don't get on the elevator, was because him putting his hand on that woman. And I think that was Ava Kamara's girlfriend. I think that's who they were talking about. And then they defended the girlfriend because they started fighting because he was trying to just get away from the situation after him touching her and everything. And what happens? He kept trying to get on. Ava Kamara put his hand out. He started pushing, and then boom, fight. So if that's the case, I don't see him getting suspended for a very long time, maybe 2 to 3 games, just because it was a self-defense of the woman, to protect the lady. They saying that's what could happen, which will be a good thing because now you have AK Jamal Williams. But if he does get suspended for a long time, you only got Jamal Williams. I think we still got Benjamin on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would look. I don't think there's no other free agent running backs that you can get for a cheap price. So I would look towards the draft and get me a guy like Spears, Louisiana native, and bring him in because he said it'll be a dream come true to play for the Saints. And those people who said that's a dream for them, they just play their hearts out for that city. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that they can go. We'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara. I mean, the code of conduct policy for the NFL is really vague, and so it says basically that any type of like violent acts that lead to court or anything like that are met with a minimum 6-game suspension. So even if there's a self-defense aspect to it, even if there are all those things, it's still violence, and so the NFL might umbrella it in that same category. So my anticipation is somewhere between 6 and 10 games, I think, is what I would estimate. Now, it could be more, but the reason why I put the cap at 10 games is because we saw what happened with Deshaun Watson. He had 22 cases plus a couple of criminal cases. He walked away from that with an 11-game suspension. So for me, I don't know how you get more than 11-game suspension out of this based upon what the allegations were against Deshaun Watson. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So my logic says 6 to 10 games, but ultimately we'll see. And that 6 to 10 games can happen if that case is settled out of court, if that case gets dismissed. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, the legal process will wrap up, and then the NFL will do its own independent investigation. So no matter what happens in the legal process, the NFL might feel a type of way about it and then still suspend him for a lengthy amount of time. So we just kind of have to wait and see how it all works out. His trial isn't set to go until July 31st, I think is what it is. Maybe it's June 31st. But it's, in the summer, it's during training camp. So yeah, so it would be July 31st because it's during training camp. And so, we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But I think even if you do end up in a situation to where you don't expect Alvin Kamara to, have a lengthy suspension, which would be a shock to me, but possible, I think you still have to invest in the room. I think you still have to add talent there. And there are some free agents you can go out there and get that done with. But, I think drafting from a really, really talented pool of players at that position, like, there's nothing wrong with that. And you can do that rounds 1 through 7, as we saw with Isaiah Pacheco just last year with Kansas City. You can do that anywhere. I mean, Taji's obviously a really, really popular name, and he'll be at the local pro day here in New Orleans at the Saints facility on the 7th of April. But Roshan Johnson out of Texas, they have a top 30 visit scheduled with Dwayne McBride out of UAB for later on. I think it's in April. There's a lot of really, really talented running backs in this year's class that they can find and would immediately translate to their game.
Definitely, man. Definitely. And I guess we can kind of move off from the offensive side for like right now and move to the defensive side because I know we lost a lot of, key pieces. I know everybody's favorite was Caden Ellis, an up-and-coming star, got his play time and showed what he can do. But there was no way the Saints was going to offer that type of money to him to be a backup, to
Right.
be on the side. So I understood, that I did tell people I do kind of miss David Adamadu. Inside Tuttle, but I feel like all 3 of those players that we really lost, and you can say Davenport, put him in there too. I feel like all of those players are literally replaceable because David Adamadu, for some reason, he would always show up in the game for you when they put somebody in the middle like Cam Jordan or Davenport or somebody, that was forcing double team. Anytime that they wasn't, he was basically getting double team and he was nothing, he didn't make a so that's why I told people I think David Adamadu is going to look really good with the Falcons right next to Grady Jarrett because
big time.
so I think he's going to make some noise with them. And so I said I think he is replaceable. I think Side Tuttle's replaceable. But I wanted to ask you, what was your thought on the 2 new additions, Nathan Shepard and Kalen Saunders?
Yeah. So when I look at Saunders, so he and Shai Tuttle were actually tied at run stop percentage last year at 41st in the NFL, but Colin was 100th in pass rush win rate, while Shai Tuttle was 130th in pass rush win rate. So it's a 30 spot improvement. You had, I think David Onyemata was 81st in run stop percentage, if I remember correctly. Nathan Shepard, amongst DTs that took more than 200 snaps in the interior, I believe he was at like 78th or something like that. So he was a little bit better. But where David Onyemata was 26th in pass rush win rate, Nathan Shepard was 10th. He was top 10 in the NFL. amongst all DTs that took at least 200 pass rushing snaps, according to Pro Football Focus. And so when I look at the additions of Colin Saunders as well as Nathan Shepard over Shai Tuttle and David Onyemata, I think you see that the Saints wanted to kind of stay where they were in terms of being able to generate good run stop ability, but improve as an attacking, pass rushing defensive interior, which is a presence that they haven't really had ever since Malcolm Brown wasn't there, creating those double team matchups and then getting David Onyemata those one-on-one matchups. And so I think that they're good signings. Colin Saunders was one of my favorite prospects in the 2019 draft. And so I was super excited to see that the Saints had signed him. Nathan Shepard, the Saints wanted last year, but he wasn't ready to leave New York yet. So when they came back to him this year and said, hey, want you back, like we still want you here, he was, all about it. He was like, that meant a lot to me that they wanted me a year later. And so I think that that's what I see from those two additions is you kind of stay where you are in terms of the running game, which you're okay with, even though the Saints run defense was a little weaker. Well, not a little weaker, a lot weaker last year, 24th in terms of rushing yards after being top 5 for the past 3 years. They were still up there in terms of points per game, points allowed, all those other things. And because they were top 5 when it came to the run game. So I think you get somebody that allows you get two players that allow you to stay where you are in terms of your ability to stop the run, but serve as better pass rushers from the interior, which is the quickest way to impact an opposing quarterback.
Definitely. And I think that I know we re-signed Malcolm Roach, so that's, 3 D tackles you have on the roster. That's still not enough injuries, rotational. So we got to go get some more talent. And I asked this question on Twitter, and I got a lot of yeses and a lot of no's. So they had 2 players that catches my eyes that I would like to bring in, but a lot of people are hating on them because they're a little bit older, they veterans and stuff like that, which I understand. You get older, they might not produce as much, but these 2 guys are still producing, at a really good level for their ages. And but a lot of people's like, nah, I'd just rather go to the draft and get some young studs. I'm like, okay, cool, I understand. I like Kalaji KNC, I like the guy Smith from
Mozzie, from Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan and stuff. I like the guy from Baylor. I like certain players, cool. But I told him, I said, these other 2 guys you just signed in, yes, they've been in the league for a little bit, but they're not veterans where they've been here for 10 plus years in the league like some of these other ones that I'm about to mention. And those 2 players, number one was Calais Campbell. He's about to visit the Falcons, I think, tomorrow, and you do not want to see him over there with Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata. That D-line will be scary for an Atlanta Falcons. I feel like he'll bring that veteran present. He won't cost too much. He's still producing at a high level, and he's a great run stuffer, and pass rusher, but he really can stuff the run. And then the other person I thought of was because the Seahawks, Miss Megan's team dropped him, was Al Woods, man. And we drafted him, and everybody's like, well, he's old. I'm like, did you not see what he did to our O-line last year? That boy was just pushing people out the way, stuffing the run. I said, do y'all remember the Seahawks game last year? Number 99 is stuffing the run every damn play. They were like, yeah, that's Al Woods. And I said, why wouldn't you want to bring somebody like that just as a veteran? You can bring one shit. To be honest, you might can bring both of them on a cheap price because you still got money to play around. And you know how we are. We find a way to make it hit $1 million against the cap, and they earn all that money with just, here, get 20 tackles this season for me. Here's the rest of your money. It's just they make it work for you. So what do you think about those 2, or is there anybody else that you might know of that like, hey, I think these people could be a little bit better?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think they're really young at that position right now, and so having a veteran makes a ton of sense. And so probably my favorite out of those 2 is probably the latter. Calais Campbell's still really good. I'll eat my words if I say too much here, because if he signs with the Falcons and then goes off with those other guys on the interior, but I think out of those, I think Al Woods is probably the guy that makes most sense to me. And then you go and you find the young pass rushers in the draft. But I would also bring back Katavius Street if you can and if you're interested. You know what I mean? Because then you get somebody that's familiar with the system, just like you did by keeping Malcolm Roach. And so I could see the value in, bringing back Katavius Street. I can see the value of reuniting with a Mario Edwards Jr. who can play both inside and out for you. I thought he played really well with the season that he spent with New Orleans. And so I like all the different things that they can do here. And so there's no wrong answer really. But I do think that avoiding players because they're quote old is a little short-sighted, because right now they're really, really young at that position, right? Like you have 2 guys that just finished rookie deals. You have an undrafted free agent going into his first his first full contract in Malcolm Roach, and then you have nothing, right? You got Prince Emeli in the reserve future deal, but he's not a very experienced veteran either who hasn't really seen a ton of playing time. And so you have 3 rotational young players basically that's set to be your starters or your rosterable players in 2023. So yeah, I think bringing in a veteran makes a ton of sense, and I absolutely think that they should do that. Who it is kind of irrelevant, but as long as they can bring somebody in that can have an impact and that can help to mentor, tutor, do all the things that you want done with a veteran at that spot, and then you invest in it in the draft where you can invest. It's another position where you can 1 through 6, 1 through 5 in this year's draft in terms of rounds, and you can find a starting caliber defensive tackle in this year's draft.
Definitely. And I remember you were saying, I like the addition of maybe bringing back Contavious Street. The only thing is, as I hear that name and I think about it, I think to myself, he probably won't come back to us just because he only signed with us last year just to be back with Ryan Nielsen. And Ryan Nielsen's on the Falcons, so I can maybe see him going, maybe get a small little deal with them to play with Ryan Nielsen again.
It's possible, but that's possible. But I mean, I talked to Contavious a ton at his locker, and he shared. I mean, like it was him, and then it was the glass pane, and then it was Cam Jordan. So he had Cam Jordan in his ear all the time, and so I have a hard time believing that they didn't develop a relationship. In fact, I know for a fact that they did and everything. So like I get that he came to New Orleans because of Ryan Nielsen, but that doesn't rule out the fact that he made connections and made good whatever, good faith, whatever you want to say, with other players too. So I wouldn't fully rule it out, but you're right. Like him going to Atlanta has to be just as likely as him coming back to New Orleans.
Yes. And then I guess the next position that I think is really important because I guess you could say it's really important to me just because you don't want to go into another season with Cameron Jordan still saying, can I have my hope on the other side? Like, not saying that Carl Granderson can be that guy, because he's been improving every damn year that he gets his opportunity. But I think we need another veteran. And is there any veterans to you that, come to mind? Because I see a lot of people saying, I don't know how to pronounce the man's name that right, but he played for the Colts last.
Yannick Ngakoue. Yeah, that's exactly who I was going to mention too. I mean, he's had 8 sacks every season of his career. So you put that kind of consistency across from Cam Jordan, who's had 7.5 ever since 2012. I mean, I think that's a value. Now, Yannick Ngakoue does have a lot of low impact sacks on his coffer, right? So a lot of those like late game, garbage time sacks where the quarterback's trying to make some stuff happen, all that. So he has a lot of low impact sacks, but even still, you just lost 14.5 sacks from last year. And, Marcus Davenport accounted for a half, but then you had, Caden Ellis who had 7, and then you had, the combined rest between Shai Tuttle and David Onyemata. And so like I look at Yannick Ngakoue and I say, okay, well that gets you 8 sacks back, hopefully, And so I like what Carl Granderson has done. I think Carl Granderson has developed really well. I mean, he kept Marcus Davenport on the sideline toward the end of the season and everything. But can you say with your whole chest that he's your starter opposite Cam Jordan? I don't know that you can. And then your only other option there is like Tano Passanio. And so you have like these rotational guys basically. And so can you find another veteran to mix in with them? And maybe do you look at, another young edge rusher in the draft? Doesn't have to be in the first round. It's another one where you can find them late. KJ Henry out of Clemson, for instance. Adetomo Adebawore out of Northwestern in the second round. Like there's a lot of people that make sense to add to that rotation as well.
Yes, and I know you got a few more minutes, so I just want to squeeze in a few more questions for you. Basically, the veteran players type, D tackle. Some people want to get younger. Some people want to get, a little bit older because, hey, bring that present because we already kind of got young players there.
Yep.
It's been, rumored, but we don't know if it's true or not. But they were talking about maybe DeForest Buckner might be wanting to get out, right? And if Buckner wants to leave the Colts and wants to be traded, would you say that would be a good person to maybe trade for and add to your D-line?
I mean, ultimately, it depends on, like, what's the asking price? What does it cost to get him in? He's going to want a new contract. What's that new contract? Like, there's a lot of unknowns to be able to say whether or not that's a good or bad move. I would probably avoid it, though, because I don't know that you have the luxury of giving up draft capital for a veteran player when you have you still have so many needs on your roster, right? Defensive interior, you still want to rebuild. Edge rusher, you still want to address. Linebacker, you still need to add depth to. Wide receiver, you still want to add depth to. Tight end, you probably would still want to add depth to. Running back, you still need to address. Like, there's still so many of those needs all over this roster that you want to make sure that you address. So I don't know if trading for a guy like DeForest Buckner, who you're either going to have to move on from very quickly because you don't want to give him the contract, or you have to give him the contract that you don't really have the resources to give him. I don't think you do that. I think you go for the cost control, you go for the veterans on the market, and then you go for the cost control of the rookies.
Gotcha. And adding depth, I know you said we need to add depth to the linebacker, which is, definitely for sure because of, you got Pete Warner, who's been playing a little injured here and there, but, he's a dog when he's in the game. You got DeMario Davis. There ain't nothing to say about him. You know who he is. But he is getting a little bit older, so you do need to find maybe a replacement for him, too, as well, to go next to Pete Warner. So I know they said they brought back Ty Summers. Some people are saying Ty Summers could have maybe the impact that Caden Ellison have, if he has, the time to play on the field like that. But linebackers, as I'm thinking of, yes, you can maybe bring in a veteran that's willing to sit behind Pete Warner and all that because, not everybody wants to. Kawan showed you that. Like, hey, I don't want to sit behind Pete Warner. I want to play. I want to be a starter. That's why he left. But as I'm thinking of it, since you're going to have to basically sit behind those two, and you're not going to really find a veteran that's going to want to sit behind a young guy like Pete Warner, I say look into the draft. And one of my favorite linebackers so far, I don't know why, but maybe I'm just being biased because, we're from Louisiana, is Tulane's linebacker. Because this dude, with his broad jump and everything, they saying he's really fast, athletic for, a linebacker. And he's saying the same thing. He would love to play for the Saints as well, to stay in Louisiana, stay in New Orleans, So, I mean, who would be any linebackers that you can see maybe coming out of the draft that you would say, hey, I'll get this guy at the right price, at the right time?
Yeah, Iowa's Jack Campbell's an easy one for me. He's probably your immediate DeMario Davis replacement in a couple of years. Just above the shoulders football, super good at he's like really solid at everything on the field, kind of Pete Werner-ish in that way, but is a really fantastic play caller, diagnoser, communicator, all those things. Those are the traits that you want for somebody playing DeMario Davis's role with the green dot in communication, calling the shots, being the quarterback of the defense. So I think like Jack Campbell's one of those guys. Drake Thomas out of NC State is another one that could be one of those guys. Ben Van Sumeren out of Michigan State, who's just this hyper athletic 42-inch vertical, 4.4 speed, a little bit undersized linebacker, like 6'1", 6'2", I think he came in at like 40 something, maybe 30 something. So you can add a little bit of weight to him for sure and still maintain that speed, but hyper athletic, all that, kind of like a Dorian Williams out of Tulane, who's very very, very athletic. And so I kind of like those linebackers. I like the guys that are going to be able to come in and either be hyper athletic like Dorian Williams and Ben Van Sumeren, or the above the shoulders football play callers like Drake Thomas, and then of course Jack Campbell. So those are the ones that I really like in this year's class. It's not a super good linebacker class, like off-ball linebacker class this year. So you're probably looking at second, third round guys at the earliest. I don't know you're going to see any first round off-ball linebackers. I certainly wouldn't invest in a first round off-ball linebacker ever. But how the NFL draft goes will be how the NFL draft goes. But there are those guys there for sure. And I do think that like Ty Summers he's a core special teamer for you, and he's going to be massive for you in that area of the game. He was fantastic on special teams for them. I don't know that he gets a lot of run on defense, but I think like keeping an eye out for understanding now the value that Caden Ellis brought you as a pass rusher. Can Zach Bond serve that role if you allow him to finally be a pass rusher as opposed to what Sean Payton and then we're trying to do in terms of converting him to an off-ball linebacker? Or does DeMarco Jackson make a good recovery and look good for you and be another one of those hyper athletic sideline to sideline linebackers? What does Nephi Sewell turn into? Like, they still have a few of these guys to keep an eye out on going into training camp. And so they can go into the draft and try to invest there, but they even now still have kind of like a deck that you could say, okay, that person would be next up, and then these guys would be down toward the bottom. But I do think you want to add more talent there for sure.
Definitely. And then I basically had 3 more questions, but I think I'm going to put these two, kind of together and ask you at once. But before I ask you those two, basically in one question, because I want to, keep the topic on the linebacker. Do you think Jackson has a chance of earning the role? Because remember, he was looking like the next Kawan, basically kind of like play that we thought was going to like, but got hurt and was out all season. So, I mean, he's still on the roster currently, I guess, Can you see maybe him making an impact and having a shot this year?
It all depends on his injury recovery. right? Like that was a season-ending injury before the season. So let's see what happens when he gets back out on the field. Can he stay healthy? Does he still have the sideline to sideline speed? Does he still have the short area quickness? I think, sure, if he has all of those things, sure, yeah, absolutely. He could be somebody that would be in for a backup role to serve as a will linebacker, a coverage guy. But we got to see how his injury recovery goes before I can really like make any estimation around that.
Gotcha. And then this is the last one, basically, but I'm gonna put them into, two of them into one. Basically, we talked about some of the free agency signings and stuff, but what is your thoughts now? Do you think, number one, do you see the Saints even going into the draft now, trying to draft a safety or a corner? Because you just seen all these, these two guys that can play either, any spot, safety in the slot. They can play corner for you. And then our DB room was already deep before. You got Tyrann Matthews, you got Marcus May, you got Lattimore, you got Alontae Taylor, you got Adebo, you got Bradley Roby, and now you just added Donnie Johnson, I think his name is, and
Lonnie Johnson.
and Lonnie Johnson, and who's the other one? I was
Jonathan Abram.
Jonathan Abrams. I mean, do you even see the Saints? My bad. I don't know why my camera keeps freaking falling. But yeah, do you even see the Saints looking in the draft to get another safety and all that? I mean, maybe to be on the practice squad.
Yeah, no, I don't know about on the practice squad, but I mean, like, do you have a real solution at in the slot if Bradley Roby ends up hurt again? Like, I don't think you do at the moment. Like, you have to see, like, how does Smoke Monday come along? Can Lonnie Johnson play that role? Could Jonathan Abrams play that role? I don't think that's really their role. I think, you might see Lonnie Johnson a little bit more as like a move guy, kind of like what they did with PJ Williams. Jonathan Abrams would be a little bit more of a box safety. Smoke Monday could be a slot guy for you, but do you know that for sure? They've already got a pre-draft visit scheduled with a younger slot corner out of Maryland, if I remember correctly. They're doing their homework on another slot corner. Howden is his last name. He's a late round pick guy. So like they're still looking at that position. And we have to remember too that even though Jordan Howden is the Minnesota corner's name, and then they have a pre-draft visit scheduled with the Maryland guy whose name I can't remember. But like, look, Lonnie Johnson and Jonathan Abram got signed, yeah, but remember they're on 1-year deals, and so it doesn't preclude them from doing anything. They also brought in Troy Pride Jr. from Carolina / like Los Angeles, and so if the value's right when they're on the board at a certain point and they feel like that person can be their pick, then that's what they're going to do. I mean, just like they did with Alontae Taylor last year, right? It's like the same example, just like they did with Alvin Kamara back in 2017. Like they'll never stop building on a strength, but at least now they have sort of the stockpile to say, okay, they have the depth that they need, expecting Marcus May to potentially miss time with a suspension still in 2023 because his alleged aggravated assault charge or armed assault charge got dismissed or was refused due to lack of evidence in the Jefferson Parish courts, but his DUI from 2 years ago in New York is still outstanding, and we should know more about that hopefully toward the end of this month. And so you still potentially without May for 3 games, let's say that's the usual kind of DUI suspension. And then you have a bunch of other guys that right now you don't know if they fit, right? You just have guys to see how they do fit over the course of training camp.
Definitely. And then I guess just one more for you because it popped up as we were talking about the corners about Bradley Roby, him playing in the slot. Him playing that slot position, is there anybody else you think that could maybe possibly move over to that? Maybe like a Debo or Taylor? Because let's say a Debo starts again and Lattimore. What you going to do with Taylor? You're just going to have him on a bench? I mean...
Yeah, probably. Those guys are on rookie contracts, so there's no reason not to allow them to just, to allow yourself to have really, really good depth on the perimeter. But there's a chance that they get cross-trained, you know what I mean, and see if they can hold up. That's going to be one of the more interesting things to watch over the course of camp is do they do that, right? Do they go through that process and say, okay, we want all 3 of these guys on the field at the same time? I think that would be awesome if they get somebody that is able to, if they find that Adebo can do that, or if they find that Taylor can do that. I know, like, I talk to Taylor all the time when he was around or when we were in season, and he'll tell you all the time, whatever, ask me to do anything, I'll do it and everything. And so, like, he's down. There's no doubt about that. And he has, he's mad physical. He's super, super physical. You saw the way he handled guys like, Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins and stuff like that. Like these big guys. His first snap as a starting corner or whatever was against DeAndre Hopkins of all people, and he held his own. He was great. And so, I look at all that and I say, yeah, if you can get all three of those guys on the field at the same time, absolutely. But if not, then yeah, you keep the depth stockpiled, and then you have really, really excellent perimeter corner depth, and you can't have enough of that in this league's game.
Definitely. That's why I was just basically asking you, because you were talking about, Alontae Taylor. Paulson Adebo, amazing rookie year. Last year, got hurt in camp, and then hasn't looked the same. Like, he was still good, but he wasn't.
Yeah, but he struggled.
Adebo that
He struggled
seen.
last year.
So I was thinking maybe it was because of the injury, on his ankle or whatever he had. I was like, maybe that's what caused him. And then you see Alontae Taylor, and you're like, damn, Alontae Taylor, dog, you locking almost every top guy that you're going against. You are showing them, who you are. And I'm saying I don't want to see that guy on the sidelines when I know. Matter of fact, Taylor seems like he's a little bit quicker and has a little bit more speed than Adebo, so he would be somebody I may look to have on the outside for those guys that they try to speed down. Because I've seen some plays where it looked like Alontae Taylor got beat, but next thing you know, he turned it up and came right back to it. And I was like, that's why I said I don't want to see that man on the sideline.
Yeah, he did a wonderful job. There was like an out and up that Arizona ran. It was like the third or fourth play of the game on that Thursday night football game. It was on the right side of the field. He had it was Zach Ertz, right? So not the speediest guy in the world, but they were trying to take advantage of Alontae Taylor being like an aggressive rookie, basically. And so he was lined up on a tight end, and they ran sort of this out and up, and like Ertz got out of that clean, but Taylor closed that gap so quickly. And so what he'll tell you is that he knows he basically what he said to me was, I know I'm not the biggest corner, but I trust my speed, and he's got world-class elite speed. So absolutely, that makes a ton of sense. And so I can see either one of those guys there. I mean, you need speed in the slot now too, like any and all. And I think the Saints could also approach it as, what's the game plan this week, and how do you get the best 11 players on the field as your starters? And that game plan could change from week to week based upon what the matchup is. And so I think that's one of the reasons why, like, you're in a position here now. It's where you have Dennis Allen as your head coach, who's a DB specialist, Joe Woods, a defensive coordinator, who's a DB specialist, and you have a fantastic DB coach, secondary coach, in Marcus Robertson. Like, they'll do the right things to get the right people on the field at the right time.
Definitely. And I definitely do appreciate you, coming on. Like I said, I'm like Nick Underhill.
Yeah.
But, like I said, I love Nick Underhill as a reporter, man. Like I said, he does his thing. I'm just been, trying to get him to come on the show. But like I said, that's why I like you a little bit more, because, you're doing your thing too. You do your own channel for the Locked On, you do your reporting, and you still try to make up free time, to come on my channel, Big Q, everybody, that needs.
Glad to do it, man. Glad
that
to do
needs
it.
somebody. So I do appreciate. So everybody that's in the chat, if y'all don't mind, make sure y'all hit that like button on y'all way out over here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you are new. And like I said, make sure y'all go subscribe to Locked On Saints. If y'all are not, y'all are kind of crazy for not being subscribed, because like I said, this is a channel that's going to give you everything, coverage every single day. They post every day, and it's coming from Ross Jackson himself, a Saints reporter. So why wouldn't you want to, subscribe to that channel? And also turn your notifications on so you don't miss out on the podcast and the videos that we do. And basically just to tell everybody, we discussed, you heard everything on the show, what we discussed. And Ross Jackson said he ranks this about a B right now so far, on the cooking. The food ain't ready to eat this yet, because he said we still got a little bit more to add on to that. But with that being said, I appreciate y'all coming on and watching the show. I appreciate Ross Jackson again, man, for coming on. And like we tell everybody, until next time, right? Because, this ain't the last time he's going to be on here. And with that being said, man, Ross Jackson, I need your help on the way out. We always tell everybody who what?
Who dat?
Who dat, man. And we are out of here until next time. Love y'all.
Run it up, Valero. Say what they lie. Say what they lie. Say what they lie. Say what they lie. We screaming black and gold. We screaming black and gold. We screaming black and gold. We going to the bowl. We screaming black and gold. We screaming black and gold. We screaming black and gold. Saints going to the Super Bowl, talking black and gold. Young Nolan hooded Jew on the beat, we let you know. Chris Olave, MC down the field. Once to throw the ball deep, yeah, you know it's getting real. Put Jarvis in the slot, he gon' do damage. AK in the backfield, you know, do Randy Davis coming through the line. QB running out of time. Tom Brady, that's mine. Yeah, the Saints did it fine. Hold up, chopper style, choppers out. Them boys wild, yeah, them boys wild. Chopper style, choppers out. Them boys wild, yeah. yeah, them boys wild. Hold up, yeah, we rolling. Hold up, yeah, we rolling. Hold up, yeah, we toting, Marshawn Lattimore, play the left field. Marcus May play deep safety, so you know the deal. We got Tyron in the box, got the QB on lock. Man, we ready to rock. See, they gone in the slot out. A Devo, play the right side. Stop playing with that boy. 29, ready to ride. We ain't tripping at all. We going to the top. Yeah, we gon' spin they block. Yeah, we knocking on the top. We rap the Florida leads, so boy was poppin'. The Saints really wildin', them boys on fire. We really number one, we move with silence. We zip them boys up, if it's a problem. Chop us out, chop us out. Them boys wild, yeah, them boys wild. Chop us out, chop us out. Them boys wild. Hold up.